Yeah, so similar to the almanac that will predict the weather patterns for the farmers, we actually have we call it the farmers calendar. Literally, the 24 seasonal nodes is a guiding um, principle, and literally they will tell you when the insects are away, when the water would be most prominent, when it's time to sow, when it's time the small minor snow will come, when it's going to frost over. So that 24 seasonal nodes literally divide the year into 24 nodes, and that nodes actually is also used, they are all associated with the five elements. This also used to demarcate each year and each month, and telling you what kind of heavenly and earthly elements are interacting, causing certain patterns. Okay, so when you hear the word 五运六气, that's literally what they're talking about. Okay, for each elemental cycle, what are the elements in charge or as a guest supporting it, and then the two together can create what kind of pattern. And that energetic pattern can impact the human bodies, which is a small energetic system, right? So this year, 2024, we got the request from the class last class and say, talk about the weather, talk about what's to pay attention to. Okay, so for 2024, it's the earth dominant. Not only it's dominant, it's a strong dominance. Sometimes it's a weak pattern. So this year, the earth, it's a strong dominance for the first part of the year. And then it was the fire coming up. Okay, but the Earth's dominance actually, with the different kind of other elements forming this cold and damp dominant kind of a weather pattern. And we all know out of our five organs, which organ really is afraid and hates the cold and damp, right? One of them is your spleen. Spleen likes it dry. So the dampness really impedes the spleen's functions. Okay. So the beginning of the year, the weather would be relatively windy, cold, and also a bit wet. Okay. And when that's the case, we will extremely watch and care for our what? For our spleen. Okay. And the guest one for the first part of the year, and I'm referring to from January about April, okay, and is the water. And the water we know actually is actually controlled by the earth. So since this is the earth's dominant year, that means your kidney is relatively on the what? Being suppressed, being covered, being, having heaviness over its head, right? So the dampness also can create heavy, sticky mucus type of condition. And those condition plus the cold and damp, so what it create? A swamp. Okay, swamp can make things grow, can also makes the blockages a bit more difficult to get rid of, to dissipate it out, right? So for those people who have easily, cervical neck issues, shoulder and joints issues, or your stomach and spleen already your weak point, you need to watch for it. And when later on the water being so suppressed or the water got too cold, you need to watch for things like hands and feet actually got cold, and especially both feet got cold. Okay, for certain people, you might see a bit extra of the, if especially younger people, you will see some of the white discharges, or people whose stomach is really weak, you will see a little bit more frequent of the diarrhea. Sometimes the diarrhea is very quick, very loose, or even had little white, streaming white stuff there coming out. So those are all some of the possible consequences of the weather pattern. And once you know it, once you know your body type, and you will be a bit more conscientious in picking the food, right? If it's so cold and damp, do you still want to eat a lot of cold and damp fruits, right? And or should you conscientiously using some of the warming spices? You can also use herbs. So herbs like for the spleen and the kidney, we have some classic formulations that could be in the little pellets, teeny little balls, or could be in the granular format. So if you feel your body is struggling, you could try to go to some of the naturopathic, some of the functional medicine people and see. And for this type of weather, usually I have some big, huge moxa at hand. I'll use it to moxa my own stomach and my leg. On the outside of the leg, there's a leg 3 mile point, and that is for the and also the blood ocean. Remember those above the knee, we always have you rubbing them. You can also moxa them. Okay, so these are some of the caring method. And this year, later on in the year, finally we get some fire returning. Last 2 years, water, 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 and then fire is so suppressed. A lot of people really struggling with their heart, right? This year, thank goodness, fire is returning, but the fire is also pretty suppressed by the cold and damp. So we still need to later on in the summer and be a bit more protective of our heart as well. So we'll do the first part of the year, okay? And that's, I know, could be pretty dense and difficult, but in our exercise and in our advice of food and what to eat and what herbs and oil to use, we will give you little tips, okay? And in terms of the oil, their warming spices is pretty easy to pick up. One of them, is the ginger. Ginger really warm up the stomach and spleen. Okay, that's what ginger does, right? And the mustard is even more, the yellow mustard is even more supportive of the spleen. And the black pepper is wonderful for the kidneys. Okay, it's warming, but also it's consolidating. So it's a nice little spice when your kidney needs a little bit pickup. But you can also always go to a Chinese medicine doctor, get that herbal formula if you think your spleen need a little bit booster or your kidney need a little bit more nudging. Okay, but food-wise, spice-wise, and we have those actually as oils that you can literally rub your stomach and spleen points to help them warming up. Of course, not eating cold food helps, right? And right now, and this year, we could have some wet winter extending to about February or even after February. So that's the prediction, okay? If you have major snow, because beginning from January on, did you notice it's windy and wet, right? Those were the two. And then to February could be cold and wet, all right? And when you go outside, remember we said cold hit where? Cold enter from where? Feet, ankle, okay? And you can seep up to the knee joints. So do two things. One is go find those lined pants, okay? That's number one, put them outside. But inside, do those, they call it long johns, they call it winter pajamas. I found, the Under Armour, Nike, those, they have the winter leggings. And when you exercise, you don't get wet, but they whisker the moisture away from your body, but also it captures your body heat. So those would be very nice when you go outside. You have an inside layer, keep the body temperature, and also you have an outside breaking the wind, double insert. And once you do that, you don't have to spend so much of your own yang qi to keep your body in certain temperature, right? protect yourself against it, right? And of course, people like my kids won't be caught dead wearing an inside one until their knees started hurting and they found the leggings saving grace. So you don't need to wait until your knee hurting, right? And for those whose joints hurt, then you even need more help because cold hit from the feet and the ankle, right, can seeping through the knees. Wind hit what? Where? People were tapping here and here. Yes. So I know wearing hat is not that cool, but could you put a little scarf? So your wind pound is covered, here is covered, but actually those are gallbladder points and wind hit those points, right? So if it's very windy, and cover those points. And then guess what? You spend less fighting them. Of course, if you went out, didn't know what the weather was like, you got hit. Coming back, ginger soup, ginger garlic soup, and we have a wonderful dish called not sour and spicy, 酸辣汤, sour and spicy soup. And those are wonderful for those who got hit by the wind because it was made of what? Ginger and black pepper and vinegar. So that soup, if you go to the Chinese restaurant, if you say sour and spicy, 酸辣汤, they all know what it is. They drive the cold and the dampness out. Okay, and of course, if you have ginger oil, put some in your tea, put some honey there, and warm up the stomach. Okay, so don't wait until it's sinking inside. You drive it out when it's still superficial, right? When they keep going inside, and that's when it's harder and harder to get it out. All right, that's some winter tips. And I know a lot of traditions would have chicken soup that you would put pepper, garlic, onions there, right? You do it for a reason, right? And also this type of season, a lot of the families like that beef barley soup, right? Which makes sense too. And those are both warming. And one of them, the barley, actually extract the moisture out. So those with ginger, with black pepper, with a little onion, with a little garlic can do the trick too. Branch out. There's still coriander. There's still, cilantro, very great for the liver detox. There's celery seeds. There is basil. There are all kinds of, but those that's little seeds tend to be more young.
Cardamom?
Leaves a little bit cooler, okay? Cardamom, it's a warm one too. So a lot of those things in the Arabic tea and in the Indian chai, and a lot of them are warming spices and wintertime or early spring, but still this year would be a very late spring. We'll have a cold and damp going probably way into February, maybe into March. So once the weather calls for it, eat accordingly, right? Remember we talked about there's no such thing as healthy foods for all. It's all dependent on what's going on outside, weather-wise, what's going on inside your body. And then you plan energetically, right? And the food, let's just do it one more time, what they do for you. Spicy food like chili pepper, they actually express the dampness out, right? Spices that warming you up, that would be like ginger, black pepper, and all those warming spices. They actually warm you up, right? And the salty food consolidates to the kidney. They pull energy downward, okay? All right. And so spicy push things outward. Sour actually also moving things downward. Okay, sourness. Or pull from outside in. All right. So that's the kind of the direction of these. Sweet just create moisturization. And then they go round and round and try to balance it, moisturizing everything. Okay. So those are different bitterness too. Bitterness actually detox the heart fire. Okay. So they all have its place in balancing out the energy for us. Okay. All right. That's the little what's going on outside in the weather and what could you do. Of course, exercise wise, we all know we can balance out the energy with Qigong, as always.